All right, welcome everybody. We have been having so much dang fun. It's just ridiculous. We are in our third day, our final session of the Impact Summit for the 2021 International Climate Action Challenge. And this session is all about how to take that to the next level to empower your community. And so before we get started, I just want to introduce our co-presenters. So we've got Jen DeMaio and Vicki, Carey-David, and also Anna Burrell with Twiggs and Co. So I'm going to go ahead and start. Let's see here. I always say thank you for your patience, but I'm not sure if this is bothering you or if you're okay, but either way. All right. So this, at the end of last year's, so quick context. So 2020, I wrote a book called Climate Action Challenge. And I was like, how are we going to get people to do it? Maybe we should host a Climate Action Challenge. And so wrote the book, put it out there. We had 86 teams that came on board and did the Climate Action Challenge, and it worked. Our teams planted something like 34,000 trees and started bunches of gardens and did cleanups and started community groups, and they started for the whole province of Alberta Drawdown. And so at the end, I was like, okay, guys, it works. Go do it everywhere. And so that is kind of the message from the very beginning, is that this idea, this is not about doing a once a year challenge with a select few people. This is a model that can be used everywhere and anywhere. And so that's what we're talking about today. And we kind of categories, or the slogan is mentor and mobilize. So if you haven't already introduced yourself, I know some folks were in here before from our previous session, so feel free. I'm just checking here to see who all we have. But yeah, I mean, there's new folks here, so please introduce yourself in the chat. Let us know where you're joining from. And if you joined a little bit late, just reminding you, we're recording this, we're broadcasting it on Facebook Live. And in the second part, we'll have a more open discussion. Okay, so, and this thing, it works. Our numbers for our 2021 International Climate Action Challenge, of our 275 people, 75 teams, that they planted 150,000 trees in 90 days during a pandemic. That's crazy. They started 130 gardens. They started 3 urban farms, held 40 cleanups, removed 48 tons of debris, composted 9 tons that otherwise would have been in landfills, held 200 community events, reached out to 25,000 people, and developed 200 partnerships. Woo, that's amazing. So this is this tiny little experiment with these huge results. So our idea is, here's where our teams came from. So we have an idea that doesn't just work in the developing countries, people with high tech, high budgets, high carbon emissions. This works everywhere in the world. And so this idea, where can this be used? It can be used anywhere. We've talked with school districts who say, well, we have eco clubs kind of here and there. We're not exactly sure where they are, what they're doing. It's like, oh my goodness, why don't you have a 90-day challenge and then also build this into an annual plan that keeps spiraling upward. Every city that has a climate action plan. I've worked with, I started a green team in Congress Park neighborhood as part of the Denver Sustainable Neighborhood Network in 2016. Why don't we have this as part of every city climate action plan? In 2019, I mentored 22 teams as part of the Green Team Accelerator Lab. We had faith communities and youth groups and school eco clubs. I mean, just anybody that wants to make an impact. But of course, people haven't been trained on how to do this. They don't know where to start. And we know as a world that we haven't been effective in protecting the planet. And so let's stop just telling people make a difference. Let's help them do it. And let's help them do it on a big scale. Faith communities, you could work with all the faith communities in a certain area to work on food sovereignty issues, or all the Buddhist something of a certain following all around the world, do a climate action challenge at the same time, be collaborating, communicating, making this network. Neighborhoods, I already mentioned. If your company has different departments and you're trying to get people to communicate, then you can do this on a multinational level, or maybe just in your own office, or maybe people are working remotely. This is a way to get people harmonized and engaged and synchronized. At a university, we had a professor last year that taught this class in her senior year, for her senior year students. But how about changing it instead to your freshman students that are in environmental studies? Let them start something and get it going through all of their years, or having this be something, let's say at a school where every group is involved: food service, custodial, environmental sciences, art, music. There's nowhere that this doesn't touch. And so our whole thing is, you've got these ideas, you want to make something happen, but you're going to have to find somebody that's actually going to say, heck yeah, this is a good idea. Here's some money, here's some communications, here's some time that you can work on it, or time that people can join you. So that this is where I want to turn it over to Twiggs and Co. for this idea of how do you get decision makers to go for it. So let me stop sharing my screen. And do you guys want, are you doing screen sharing, or are you, no? Okay. So take it away.
Cool. Well, thank you, Joan, for that introduction. The biggest thing I think, and I've found, is you have to figure out what language they're speaking. So if you're talking to a religious group, they're going to have a different language than a corporate group is going to have. So if you're talking to, especially in the United States, or those of us in capitalistic societies, big measures are around what are called KPIs, or key performance metrics. And the beauty of what Joan has designed with the Green Team Academy is you can go to someone and say, can you imagine the marketing material that will come from planting 100,000 trees, or providing support for these organizations? Vicki has done some incredible work around mobilizing community. So can I kick it over to you?
Sure. I think that utilizing the Green Team Academy's model of finding your 100 partners, finding your ideal 100 partners, is really critical in the success of creating a climate challenge. You can have your partners internally, so doing a stakeholder analysis of who needs to be involved, who needs to get to say yes, and finding those partners. Is it facilities? Is it your directors? Is it the CEO? Is it HR? Those are partners, but then you also have external partners. So if you're a church or a university or even a business, you're going to need to have an external stakeholder connection. And so you don't operate in a vacuum. And so if you're a company and you want to create composting or community gardens or something like that, your business is in the community, and so the community should be involved. And so there are ways to reach out to your community, to your religious groups. If you're a business, you want to reach out to businesses, government, and nonprofits to help facilitate this, because they are all stakeholders in your goals, whether you're a university, a company, a church, a school. You have internal and external stakeholders, and having those 100 partners that the Green Team Academy has in their model is a phenomenal framework to implement your programming.
So Vicki's saying this really great word, stakeholders. And this is one of these words that those of us in the business world are just mired in, people talking about their stakeholders, but who actually are stakeholders? And this is a beautiful place for Joan's call to mentor and mobilize comes in place, because honestly, we can all be mentors. We all have superpowers. We all have knowledge and experience that no one else has. No one else has our unique combination of thoughts, of beliefs, of motivations. And so taking that, it provides this really amazing opportunity from, if you only have one person to talk to, or if you have hundreds of people to talk to, it's still important. So in talking about stakeholders, we at Twiggs & Co. are very adamant about our stakeholders are not just people. They are the people, places, and things that our actions impact, and that impact our actions. And so from this people, places, and things kind of perspective, one of the great ways to start is to start by having conversations. So I was speaking with Tamara from Curacao earlier, and she was talking about how in recycling cardboard, the fellow that recycles cardboard, it costs him too much to pick something up. So then using the Green Team Academy model, we or she or anyone who sees the same kind of thing can be like, oh, I'm going to follow up on what will it take to get cardboard collected and then given to this guy who is able to recycle it. So this is the very foundational piece of how to do a stakeholder analysis. Really, it's fancy words for saying, let's go talk to the people who are directly involved. Now it gets a little trickier when we start talking about environment, but again, that's also where it's really cool that the Climate Action Challenge has support for how do we consider things that can't talk. Let's start talking about, or let's think about the impact. I'm just going to stick with the cardboard example. The impact that being able to take X number of kilos or X number of pounds of cardboard and put them back into use and put them back into the cycle so they're turning into something beneficial. Well, then suddenly we are able to calculate that tonnage and be like, okay, so this was X number of trees, and their sacrifice has not gone in vain, and there's water involved in creating cardboard. So then we get to calculate that as well. And so in the stakeholder analysis, it really starts with that conversational piece.
So to add to that, in that conversational piece, so for those of those people who like lists of how to do things, I like lists very much. So if you're like, well, how do I get my director involved in this? How do I get them to say yes? So start with identifying the decision makers who you want to get to a yes. How do you talk to them? Is it your HR team? Does HR need to be involved? Does facilities need to be involved? Does marketing need to be involved? Does administration need to be involved? Who needs to be involved in this yes process? And then who are the decision makers and who are the purse holders? So sometimes those are different people. Like, is it finance? Do you have to convince finance to fund this? And will marketing convince finance to say yes, or whomever? Think about all of their priorities in the language that they speak. Like, what is HR? What are their priorities? What is facilities priorities? What is administration's priorities? What is the CEO's priorities? What is the, whatever organization that you're talking to, what are those priorities? What words would they use to describe success so that you know what language to speak? Well, they're talking this, so you need to talk that too. And then how can a community-wide challenge help them activate their goals? So when you're talking to your stakeholders, if they're like, well, we really care about employee retention. Okay, well, studies show that corporate volunteerism is the fastest ROI that a company can make. So like if employee retention and engagement are their goals, well, this challenge will help them with that goal. Or maybe they have a SDG goal or an environmental social government goal that they are required to meet. The International Climate Action Challenge will help them create these goals that they've already established.
And it's important, it's easy to look at someone and be like, you have failed. What you're doing is not working. You should know better, blah, blah, blah. It's so easy to do that. But one of the things that we have really found is that if we are able to lead the conversation with yes, and you've done this, it did a thing. It might not have been a good thing. It might have been a great thing, but you did a thing. Now let's try something else. And having this mindset of let's continue to try. Joan has this beautiful thing of, you know what, you're going to hear no, and that's okay. So having that yes, and, you know, every time you hear no, it's an idea of, or it tells you, okay, this language isn't quite working right. So yes, and let's see what does work right. Let's see how we can really start establishing this in our school districts, the after school programs, or university places.
So for those learners who are list learners and then example-based learners, so let's say that you are in a university or some sort of school system. So here's an example of what we were talking about, of how to launch your eco initiative through this Mentor and Mobilize platform. So you're at a university and you're trying to figure out who your stakeholders are first. So what are the most pressing issues that are happening right now? What do they care about? What are their goals? What is administration leadership concerned about? Let's say that they're most concerned about student retention and recruitment. And so through the Climate Action Challenge, this blueprint conversation, we can start to understand who the stakeholders are. So maybe it is the administration, the students, the faculty. How do you get all of these people involved? How do you get facilities involved? How do you get the community involved? Maybe they share a community garden or something, and so, you know, community can come and have food. Church groups, so there's a lot of stakeholders involved. And let's talk about their goals. So they're concerned about community engagement and student activities, and we're talking about, they're concerned about student disengagement during a pandemic, and how do you create community? Are they concerned about DEIJ? Are they concerned about SDG goals or action for climate, or whatever their goals are? So you're talking to all of these stakeholders. And then through a 90-day challenge, you would try to get all of these departments together, departments and clubs and alumni. And then you start with a small pilot, and then you keep growing annually each year, using metrics, using Joan's model, the Climate Action Challenge model. And then each year, maybe you start a garden here, and then it changes, and then more professors get involved, and it becomes curriculum, and then the community gets involved. So that's just one example of how this blueprint process can work.
The second example, it has to do in the workplace. So you have a company, they have impact, they have resources. You would really like to see them do well. What's happened in a lot of our companies is what's called siloing. So you have marketing department, they don't talk to HR unless something goes wrong. They don't talk to sales or product development. What's coming out and what we're seeing more and more is that this is incredibly ineffective. And so sometimes you may be talking to almost anyone in the company and they can tell you, oh yeah, we're having problems communicating across the departments, or it seems like no one talks to each other. Those are the words. It seems like no one talks to each other. And so one of the beautiful things about the Climate Action Challenge, and honestly, where we come in, where everyone watching this video comes in, whether it's live or in the recording, we get to stand into our superpowers, even if they're just baby superpowers that are just growing. We still get to stand there and mentor and be like, hey, there's this really cool thing called the Climate Action Challenge. And guess what? There's a workbook. So let's use this. And you can start talking to people who are standing shoulder to shoulder with you, who are lower on the ladder than you are and above you on the ladder. Because the beautiful thing about eco initiatives, especially when they're done well and launching eco initiatives, is you can get employees and managers and directors, all of the people across all of the silos to start talking to each other. And now I say all, but you don't need to start with all. You know, even just getting 2 or 3 people on board to go out and do something positive. You can go for a walk on your lunch break and pick up trash. And then you start having these conversations and then be very specific and be like, hey, let's do this again next month, and invite someone in. And then you start measuring it. You can plug it into the Green Team Academy's model and the Climate Action Challenge model. And then you can start talking to HR. So human resources, hey, you're looking for ways to increase employee engagement. Here's this beautiful, beautiful model to do stuff. I see Joan started screen sharing. So is that my signal?
Exit pursued by there.
I can't see Joan anymore.
There we go. Yeah, I mean, what we wanted to do was make sure that we have time during this session to hear from folks. So I wanted to hit on some of a few more of the details here. And okay, so, you know, we're talking about this thing of mentoring and mobilizing and really thinking about how important is it that we massively transform our communities? You know, we're hearing things like you have a decade to completely change the fossil fuel system or the food system. And so the things that we've been doing in the past have not been working quickly enough. And so this really being honest with ourselves about what's working and what's not working. What we know is that the Climate Action Challenge works and that a bunch of other stuff doesn't work. So we're inviting people to think about this and to try it. And it's not, so my background first I started in engineering, and engineering is like, okay, there's problems, let's fix them. Let's just apply a solution. We fix it, we walk away. Unfortunately, that doesn't really work. When I went through wellness coaching, I found that it's really about behavior change and how do you actually help people change? How do you help them lose weight, stop smoking, stop drinking, something like that? Like, it's not easy. So you need structure, you need accountability, you need encouragement, you need fun, you need a system, you need small deadlines. And we took that addiction recovery model and put it into the Climate Action Challenge. But not only is it just this 90-day challenge, but it's part of this bigger thing. So our question is, what if you had a proven system that provided a framework, it engaged people of all backgrounds and all levels, not just like your top scientists, but also your custodial people, that it actually spurred excitement, it spurred action. And not only that, but it created shareable stories in a very short amount of time. And something that you could repeat annually, and that it could feed into an annual cycle of events. So it's not just a thing that sits out there. Just if we go back to that kind of weight loss fitness thing, you do a 90-day challenge where every day you go on a 30-minute walk, it's pretty likely that at the end of those 90 days, you're going to want to do something even bigger and better. And that's what we're seeing is this 90 days is a start. We're getting people, helping them get clear on what's important to them, being able to articulate it, have some success, have some photos, be able to communicate what they're really passionate about. And then that feeds into, okay, now we have a network of people that can work together on, maybe we need a database of something. Maybe we need somebody designing websites for us. Maybe we need to have somebody come in and train us on something. So it's just the start. And for something such as a school district or a university, the way this can work is that, let's say in August or September, you have initial training. Let's say it's a school district, initial training for all the eco clubs. And you tell them about this framework and you ask them to start by planning a day of action in October. Great. Everybody plans a day of action. They start working together. They find out who's for real, who shows up, and they get some great photos. And the others are like, wow, you guys are actually doing something. This is amazing. They set what their 90-day challenge is going to be. They do it. They have awards on Earth Day. They bring in everybody in the school. As I was saying before, art, music, custodial, career counseling, the principal, the testing, the mental health, everybody is part of it. And then they give awards and they recruit people for next year. So this thing takes all these kind of disparate ideas and gives them a vehicle to where people can come together and support each other. And really, it can be spiraling upward year after year. It delivers measurable results. And the cool thing is it transforms communities by transforming the culture so that it becomes a culture of action and positivity and creativity and yes, which is different than most of the environmental messagings out there are no, don't do that. Oh my God, you got a plastic cup? What is wrong with you? You have a plastic bottle? Don't you know how to recycle that? Why are you not composting? Like, that feels like crap. Of course, nobody wants to be around people that talk like that. But we're switching the whole paradigm and instead making it say, what do you see? There is one of the teams that we heard about in one of these big corporations. They created something so that when you check out in their employee cafeteria, it tells you the carbon footprint of your meal. And so we're talking about, well, how could you gamify that? And, like, take these wild and crazy, beautiful ideas that we need in order to create this livable future. Let's encourage those, let's support those and share that belief and think of what that can do for employee retention or student retention, or alumni giving, whatever it is that you're trying to do in your organization. So I think that, okay. So I guess what I wanted to show you just really quick was this idea of the blueprint itself. So we know that when people are saying, well, heck yeah, I would love to do that in my university, at my city for the climate action challenge, like for my climate action plan, how would I really do that? And so the next step that we offer is helping you design a climate action challenge blueprint. And what that means is helping you see what are all these different pieces that we have put together when we run our challenge. And then also, like, what is the timeline? So week by week, what are the things that you should be doing? And I thought what might be kind of fun would be to actually show you some of the things that we use, just to give you an idea of what we figured out. So one of the things that we have that's really important is our portal. And in our portal, we have all of our different members. This is where members can come in, create their profiles, tell which team they're on, what they're about. Hi, Vicki. There's Vicki right there. We can have courses. We can have groups. And, you can have different coaching pod groups. We have a group for our French speakers. So you want to have some kind of a portal where people are able to get to know each other and communicate. Another thing that we have is a whole bunch, let's see, somebody's unmuted. I'm not sure who that is. So whatever, somebody else can figure that out maybe. But another thing that we have is a lot of processes. I think I now know this, like everything that you want to do, you first are like, oh, let me just do it. And then if you're repeating it, you realize, oh, I need a process. So when we work with you to create a blueprint, one of the things we do is create processes for you. For example, how are you going to have your challengers apply to be part of the challenge? So, what are the terms? We do things like, one of the things I talk about in the book is this idea of 2% for the planet. 2% of your week is 3 hours. I mean, if you're staying at somebody's house, wouldn't you I don't know, take out the trash or something to be nice? So we're staying on planet Earth. Thank you for whoever put us here. So the least that we can do is invest 3 hours a week, cleaning up, tidying up, doing something to protect our very home that sustains us. So these are some of the terms that we put in the challenge. You're going to meet weekly with your team. You're going to do the weekly assignments. You're going to meet with your coach. And these are parts of the things that that we figure out with you when we're creating this blueprint. Here's another thing is that our teams get the book, they get the workbook, and then we ask them to do these weekly assignments. And it's pretty cool because we do things where we give them points. Like personally, I do not like games, but you know what? Gamifying things, people engage more. So you know what? We do like games. So we gamify. So when people do an assignment, they get points. If they meet with their team, they get points. If they answer questions in the portal, they post on social media, we give them points for all of this. What are the points good for? Absolutely nothing, but it doesn't matter because it's a way to communicate clearly. These are the best practices. The more you do these, the more likely your team is to make a big impact quickly. So it's us speaking a language that our challengers can understand as they come on in here. We ask them, what was your progress last week? What are your goals for next week? If they've done their writing assignment, they can put it in there. They can upload files, they can upload photos. And so what's really cool about this system, which is different than a lot of other systems out there, is we're hearing their stories week by week. We're seeing their transformation with their goals, what happened last week. If they have problems, we hear what they are. Like, it's so confusing. We don't know where to find the whatever de schmever. It's like, oh, good point. We didn't do a great job in doing that. Let's figure out a better way to do that. So together we're figuring out a system that works. So that's what this designing the climate action challenge blueprint process is about, is that we work with you in a consulting capacity to help you identify, if you're a large corporation and your main thing is employee retention, we talk with HR and say, what is the cost of losing employees? How much would it be what if we could save one employee from not leaving? Is that worth $100,000? And can we invest $100,000 in doing a challenge and see how that works? And how would we capture the data? How would we try to market that? Or maybe it's the marketing department and they're saying we always want stories about volunteerism, but it's so hard to get. Okay, well, how can we plan that in? As you saw, all of our challengers created their own stories. They made their impact. They created their own stories in 90 days. That's a huge burden off of the marketing department to provide that amount of collateral, that amount of content without them having to really go out there and do that. So that's kind of the overview of our whole process, is that we know we've got a model that works. The challenge itself is, that expression that you You sell people what they want and you give them what they need. So what people want is fun, happiness, excitement. They want to make a difference. That's what the challenge is. But the whole system is what they really need. They need a network. They need to be able to talk to people, have relationships, respect and understanding, be able to bring their authentic selves to their workplace, to their university. That students in schools need to find a way to be heard and to be respected. And that's what this is really doing from that bigger standpoint. Okay, so at this point, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording. And we're going to have kind of our more open discussion. So I'm going to also take it off of Facebook, stop the recording.